Fire-scape. Prologue. Ignace's rise and fall.
Part 2.
The next day, when he spun molten blood fire, somehow his body and mind knew more of the art of crystalling than all of the others, including the aging firemaster. Ignace was fearless when he leaned far out over the orange stream beside their training ground, and scooped a generous gobbet of the molten syrup into his dragon scale net. He twirled the net so quickly over his head, the blood fire appeared as a glowing circle, his own halo of light. It cooled quickly to a deep crimson, and he deposited it onto the dragon bone spinning wheel with a showy splat that normally would have doused him in a rain of cinder droplets. Not this time. Not even a dew-sized bead singed him, and the ball ended up dead center on the jutting spindle, perfectly balanced to be spun into an object all would covet. All eyes turned to Ignace. He had an audience. Ignace stood before the platform of the shaping wheel and started turning it, faster and faster, until the wheel reached such an impressive speed, the hollow dragon bones whistled. He blew on the blood fire, and tasted that his fire breath was deliciously more potent than ever before. His fuel made the mass glow brilliantly. Fantastic sparks shot so high in the sky, they disappeared from sight. The dragonhorn working tools might have been extensions of himself, when he raised and shaped the cooling mass on the spindle, as it turned from red to black to milky white, then crystal clear and cutting hard. And Ignace fashioned no beginner's cone or lance dagger. He created a faceted ice star that was as intricately spiraled as a front fiddlehead, yet as big as a platter. Veneer thin and unbreakable, the gently arced shape was so perfectly balanced, the weapon would float spinning through the air, and decapitate a man before he knew he was dead. A finer show of crystalling had never before been witnessed. The master looked taken aback by Ignace's newfound skill, and rather terrified. His praise was so reserved, it was an insult. And still he found fault, commenting on the tinge of inky darkness that stained the clarity of the remarkable ice star. Ignace's hand itched to pick up his treasure, and toss it through Ferencz's neck. He barely controlled his twitching fingers from doing just that, by telling himself that the old man was simply jealous and shamed, as he should be. More importantly, Ignace needed the firemaster to name him as the successor, and Ferenc would need his wrinkly mouth for that. Ignace gloated and didn't try to hide it. That night, when all the others were asleep, he slipped away to examine the black crystal that was worming its way into his heart. He knew it was the mystic source of his newborn talent, boosting his crystalling ability to wondrous heights, and fueling his breath until it tasted vitriolic on his tongue. Yet it tasted delectable. He could feel the sorcerous crystal's powerful influence emanating from inside his pack. He craved to hold the stone against his skin again, and discover what else it could do. If only it could enhance his firesight too, for his visions tended to be self-serving, and as nebulous as smoke. The firemaster labeled them dangerous in that they were misleading. If the crystal could sharpen and expand his firesight, he would know exactly what he had to do to be named the next firemaster. On the far side of the hill, he scraped together dried grass and twigs. One stroke of his finger, and one puff of his breath, was all it took to spark the kindling to life. Before he had possessed the magical crystal, it would have taken long minutes of frustrated rubbing and blowing to win him even a flicker of flame. Never again. Ignace fished the stone out. Cradled in his palm, he extended it closer to the flames to gaze upon it again. When firelight touched it, the crystal fell straight through his skin and muscle, as if his hand was water. Its passage left behind a throbbing hole. All of his inner flesh had been seared closed, and there was not one drop of blood. Clearly, it was not a hole that would ever close. Feeling somehow lesser, because of the missing bit of his body, Ignace whimpered in pain. He moved all his fingers to make sure they still had connecting bones and worked as they should. He was distracted from his injury when the crystal disappeared into bare rock, like a burrowing beetle. Cautiously, he peered into the hole. The crystal was there, at the end of an inch-long channel. Ignace didn't risk touching it again with his hand. He found a stick and lifted it out on the end. The black stone was now veined with red, as if it had absorbed his life's blood. As soon as the crystal was again exposed to the firelight, the end of the stick turned to ash, and the stone made another tunnel into the ground. Ignace dug it out again, and each time it saw fire, it reacted the same way. As the flames burned low, its reaction weakened, and Ignace's new firelight made the black crystal do fantastic things. Perhaps his flesh and blood had helped as well. And if exposed to the sun? He salivated to imagine how it would react to that most mighty fire's light. To test it, he would have to take the utmost care. Unless he showed his master the stone after all, handing it to him like a wrapped gift under the noonday sun. The idea appealed to Ignace in the best and worst way. Perhaps he did not need the old man to name him as successor after all. The morning could not come soon enough. 9 traveled to the Magma Mountains. Only 1 returned to reunite with the Bloodfire clan. When the youngest apprentice rejoined his people, he was alone. Instead of shoddy braid encircling his sleeve, he wore an amulet around his neck. As a home for the black stone, he had fashioned a miniature crystal dragon skull, complete with a hollow chamber inside. The jaw opened and closed, allowing him access to the magical crystal when he had need of it. Once nestled inside, light only touched the black stone in fractured rainbow colors, and it remained dormant. But when exposed to direct sunlight or firelight, the stone was more destructive than any weapon man could create. And more seductive than any lover. Ignace struggled to keep his face mournful when he reported the tragic deaths of the Firemaster, and his assistants, and the other apprentices. He had even concocted a believable tale about an eroded shoreline collapsing into a fast-flowing vein of blood fire, and taking everyone with it, except Ignace. Shortly after Ignace's return to the clan, there was yet another life snuffed out. The deceased was Furno, the Firemaster's 4th and most favored assistant, who had remained behind to guide the clan with visions in Feren's absence. The man had had one vision too many, and he'd been stupid enough to confront Ignace, alone, about what the flames had revealed to him. Before Furno could tell another soul what he had seen, he was struck by a bolt of lightning when there was no storm in sight. The death left Ignace, as the last living soul to hold the sacred knowledge of a Firemaster. The Bloodfire clan christened Ignace as their new leader and guide. For 20 years, everything evolved according to Ignace's design, or perhaps it was his darker self's design, for by then, all of him was bonded to the crystal's shadow heart, as it was bonded to his. It illuminated his firesight with visions of how the world should be, and it showed him how to make it so.